Hello and welcome to Accounting Excellence Talks. I'm Richard Hattersley. Thanks for joining us, and today's session is brought to you by Thomson Reuters. Well, this month marks the beginning of a new tax year, and because of that, it's the perfect opportunity to choose and to transition to new software. But this, of course, comes with challenges as well. Whether that is just keeping up with the speed of new tech, or whether that is just knowing which tech is right for your practice. But in order to do this, we've been joined by a star-studded panel of accountants today. To my left, we have Ollie Evans from Evans & Partners. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Richard.
We also have Mike Hutchinson from the Peloton. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Rich.
And we also have Alex Falcon-Huerta from Soren Falcon Consultant Accountancy.
Hi, Rich. How you doing?
And so, before we can get on and find out how these accountants overcome a lot of the tech challenges, we also have to go through a few pieces of housekeeping. So, if you do have any technical issues, just don't worry, this will be available on demand. And if you do have any questions, please email us at hello@accountingexcellence.co.uk. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Just add your questions to the comment box, which you'll be able to find to the right of the video. And we will be able to pick up these questions and ask them at the end of the webcast. So before we begin, let's have a quick look at the agenda. So today, we're going to be looking at how these triple threat of tech-loving accountants go about choosing their own tech. We'll also be looking at how they go about managing tech, and of course, how they make the most of the opportunities that come with choosing tech. But to start off with, we're going to be looking at the actual process of scoping out the need for tech. So, whether it's due to sweeping legislative changes, such as a little-known thing as MTD, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of it, or whether it's to do with just staying ahead of the competition, or just meeting your clients' needs, there's now more than ever there's more importance to actually get on board with technology. So, starting with you then, Ollie, what's your strategy for choosing apps and software? What's your first step?
I think for us, it all starts with our cloud accounting tool. So for us, the tool of choice is Xero. We've been working with Xero since 2010, so 8 years. So I think that's the first thing you need to do. That's the cornerstone of your business, and your services hang off that. So you need to choose your tool, your main tool, and then really get deep with it. So I don't think it works to have a lot of different tools and spread yourself thin over them. So I would choose one accounting tool and go with that. Then we have a couple of other tools we use as well. So we'd have a data collection tool. So we use Receipt Bank, and that helps us collect information from clients to get it processed efficiently. And then we have a reporting tool as well, which helps us feed back to clients how the businesses are doing. So we use Spotlight for that. So those are our kind of trinity of tools. And then once we start to use those to get involved with conversations with clients about how their businesses are working, and they generally get pretty excited about the time and efficiency savings from something like Xero. We then start to see other opportunities for talking about other tools and other apps to sort of fill gaps and plug gaps to give them some time back, either if they're a small business, time back with their family, or doing things they love and enjoy. So that's the approach we would take. We don't get very deep with a lot of apps. What we want to do is just say this is out there, this is available. We might just show them the Xero app marketplace so they can see there's 600 tools there. We want to see there's integration. That's really important. That de-risks the choice, I think. And really the response from clients is just, wow, I didn't know that was there. So that it's really exciting at the moment, the kind of things you can do.
Brilliant. And Alex, I'm sure you have a few things to say about actually the actual scoping out process. So what's your strategy? What's your starting point?
Similar to Ollie as well, we've selected Xero as our chosen software tool. Just again having one solution for the bookkeeping, but when it comes to how we decide on the technology, it usually starts with a conversation with our client and what their pain points are. If they're a new client and they're doing the manual bookkeeping, we would always implement Receipt Bank because it's going to give them back a lot of their time. And so we will educate them in Receipt Bank and how to use it. We don't go implementing too much technology in one go. We gradually implement it. So we'll resolve their accounting issue first, implement that. We'll then add on Receipt Bank and then implement that. At some stage, they will probably have further pain points in their business. And I will then research applications to support and to help to bring their business online. Again, having that as a gradual process and not go too crazy, because otherwise it's too much.
So where did you go about doing the research and scoping out recommendations?
So usually I would look at the Xero Marketplace because they've got several hundred applications on there for me to research. So what I then do is Xero HQ has a platform available now where a specific industry may have certain applications for that industry. So a shop might have iZettle, Vend and Xero. If they are working well with that industry, I've then got a ground to then set that up onto another company that's really similar. So if it's working well, I can see that it's working well, I'll then use those tools into another business that is similar.
Wonderful. And Mike, over to you. So how has your scoping process changed over the years?
Well, I think one of the most important things that we see with most of our clients is that they're all incredibly busy, and they're short of time and short of people. So, one of the things that is an intro to tech for any business is the fact of how it can actually release resources back into the organisation. So, you've got in our own business, we had a person who was spending 5 days a week producing Sage, producing late accounts that were wrong. And they weren't on time, so and we moved that to condense all that into one day. We went to Xero, we had it all done within a day, 1 day a week, and it was on-time information, and it was much more accurate. So all of a sudden, that person who is not necessarily in our organisation, our client's organisation, who's spending a lot of time doing the bookkeeping, can be released to do other things. So for us, it's the opening part of the conversation is what would you do with that time? If you had someone extra in the organisation, you didn't have to pay any more for, and you had 4 days a week for them to do, what would you do there? And then they say, okay, yeah, I'll do this, and they say, great. Well, let's look at putting in these tools that we can do it, and therefore we go back to the Xero and the Receipt Bank, which I have to say, I don't think, and you guys can answer me this. Is there a model where you can have Xero and not Receipt Bank, apart from a really tiny? I mean, they just have to work together, don't they?
Yeah, I think HubDoc is another good one as well, because that does all, where we used to have loads of rules set up in Xero, HubDoc now pulls online stuff, like your Vodafone bill. You can connect and it pulls your stuff through. So there's lots of add-ons that you can
Before we get into the nitty-gritty then, so when we actually come to scoping out tech, why do you think this is important for accountants to think in depth about this? We sort of touched on a couple of things at the top about meeting clients' high expectations, or just simply MTD coming in, looming over us. But as a whole, everyone, why is this really important?
I think, for me at least, I think the whole market has completely changed. And I think there's two types of buyer. One is the client who's already got the head around it, and they come and bang on our door and saying, can you help me a little bit more with all this sort of stuff? And then there's the other one at the other end of the extreme who hasn't quite woken up to MTD yet, and you've got to show them a way to get over that system.
Yeah.
They're the two primary ones, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The market's changing a lot, and clients are coming to us because they want to have those conversations. They want the support. There's a move away from just compliance-only services. So clients are saying, I kind of get you can do accounts and tax, but what I need is day-to-day support, day-to-day hand-holding, help me run my business a bit more efficiently. So that's really important. I think the integration is really important. So we need to understand how products integrate, not at the technical level, but the fact that they do. Because actually the conversation might be, the pain point in your business is because you're a retailer, you need to manage point of sale and stock. So put your point of sale system in, but know you can do that with the confidence that will integrate with Xero in 6 months' time when you need to sort out the financial parts of the business. So that's what we need to understand as accountants. How do these things work together at a business level, and how do we fill some of the gaps in the business process?
Alex, have you got any thoughts on the why these issues need to be at the forefront of accountants' minds?
Basically, a lot, people used to go to their accountant, or they probably still do, and ask for their support and their help. And they're used to a process, and they've followed their accountant, and they will sit with their accountant and ask them for their financials, and potentially they might not understand it. They will then have their tax bill maybe several months past a year end, but that's a process that has been drilled into their mind for all these years. Technology has come on board and has shifted the entire process of how we deliver that information. And now it's led by the customer, and they are approaching us saying, where is my information? I want to see it real time. The generation has completely shifted. And so it's down to us to give them the advice that they're asking for, and to be able to say to them confidently, this is your position now. Here's how much tax you have to save, because they all want to know what their tax bill is, even though they never want to pay it. And it's important for us to guide them in the right direction. So it's using the technology to deliver that information to them, because that's the only way that you can push it forward. Manual ways aren't going to work.
I mean, it's absolutely true. Everything's on demand, isn't it? When someone sends you an email, you've got to respond to it like exactly within like an hour, and they think there's something wrong with you, right? But and when you've got but if someone sold you a GPS that you put in your car that only updated every 50 miles, okay, and you just I've got to get somewhere in a hurry, and you started driving, and 50 miles later it told you were completely in the wrong place, you'd think, what? You just throw it away. So why do people have that in their accounting system? Why do they not have GPSs that update constantly so you can see where you are, in order to get where you're trying to go?
Why do we as accountants, we're all business owners, if someone sat down with one of us and said, here's information about your business from last year, well, you got my attention for about 10 seconds. So but that's what we do to our clients. Why do we do that? So it has to be more real time. It has to be more about what's happening right now. What are the issues and challenges they face as a business?
So we've all spoken about some of the advantages and the reasons why, but at this stage, the opening stage, the scoping stage, what are the real challenges that your firms have found? Ollie, starting with you first.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the big challenge at the moment is just the wealth and expanse of different apps out there. How do you pick and choose amongst all of that? If you're faced with 600 apps, how do you do it? So that's the really big challenge, and I think you've got to get deep with your core apps, and then that's what drives how you work and how you run as a business, and everything else hangs off that. I think we might talk a bit later on about some of the people skills around it as well. So people coming out of the qualifications don't necessarily get some of this stuff, and that's a big challenge too.
I think change as well. People just generally don't like change, and any form of change. They'll show resistance towards. So they're just not going to, don't necessarily want to embrace it. I mean, that's one of the best things, isn't it, about MTD turning up? It's like, guess what, guys? It's got to happen.
It's driving change.
Exactly, and frankly, I mean, it's the best thing that's ever happened to the profession by a long way. Because it will drive people into that space. And I don't know a business that's a worse business because of live data. Do you?
I think with the challenges that we were discussing, people have become more demanding because they have access to their data. They can see it, and they do expect it to be done on time, and they can see whether you've done the bookkeeping or not. That can be a challenge when the expectation, you're selling a product that's real time, and that's what you're saying to them, you're going to have live data, real time data, and so they then expect that to be kept up to date, and that can be a pressure. And I guess it's one of those things that over time we will then adapt to how we work in the office each day. So rather than spending once a quarter, it'll be, okay, maybe we'll do that once a week.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we've had clients pick us up on what real time means. So we've taken the decision to move all our bookkeeping to weekly bookkeeping from, as you say, what would previously be quarterly or monthly.
Absolutely.
I think talking about challenges is a nice point to segue into the next section, which is all about choosing tech, which is notoriously difficult for many accountants. This is a point which they trip up on many times. If you just take a look on any answers, most weeks you'll find questions from some of our members asking about the merits of different software and whether they should go with this one and putting up against another one. So in this section, we're going to be talking about how your firms go about selecting the right software for yourself and also for your clients. So starting with you, Alex, we mentioned at the start there that you were the queen of the apps, and
Thanks.
this is sort of cemented by the fact that you, I think at the moment you're juggling 47 apps at the moment, I think, if you reach that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's creeping up. And it's not intentional. And it's purely because it might not have been led by me. It might have been a client that selected a product. And so because we manage it, we need to understand how that product is being pulled into the software, the accounting software. And so it's something then we're then forced to learn quite quickly to make sure that it's reading correctly, as you know, from the financial perspective. In terms of my business, I set this up from the start. So I was able to research certain products. And so I started off with the bookkeeping software, and I gradually added on products that was relevant to the processes that I needed to do straight away. So I then added Receipt Bank, which we've talked about. I then added on Practice Ignition, because as a one-man band at the time, there was no way that I could send out, letters of engagement, for example, quickly, or put them in a post and then wait for my client to sign up. I needed to get up and running quickly. The beauty about the applications is there's no large fees that you have to pay up front. And so it was quite simple for me to decide which products I needed to implement. And it was not going to be a desktop product. So again, I will gradually add on systems a step at a time. And I would never recommend to all of a sudden select 5 or 6 different products and say, brilliant, let's add them all together and knit them all together, because that can be quite overwhelming for a lot of people. And so my approach now is I will learn a product if it's a good fit for my business and then implement it gradually and slowly.
I think we mentioned before the actual webcast about how technology can be that wow moment for a lot of clients. So how do you use clients within your choosing software process?
So basically, I will look at what they do and look at their pain points and decide what applications will be right for them, because they will be in a specific industry. So if Xero and Receipt Bank are a good fit and iZettle are a good fit, then I would put that within that industry. I would then select all my clients within that industry and work out which apps they have or haven't got, and then check to see whether they all match. Ideally, I would like the stack to be less, and I would like applications to do more than just one job, but that's not going to happen because they continuously develop. But the beauty about all the applications is that I don't have to spend my time researching and developing, because that software is doing it for me. So I don't have research costs.
Great stuff. And Ollie, I think you've got, when it comes to including clients within your tech choosing process, you've got quite a methodical approach as well, which I think we're actually going to be putting up on the screen now for you guys. Ollie, so if you want to talk us through this process.
Sure. It's interesting hearing Alex saying about clients having pain points. So we do a similar thing with the clients. If they're going through that process of change themselves, they've kind of woken up to the idea of cloud technology and how that's going to save them time and effort in their business. So we want to look at the business process, because all the technology does is enable the process, makes it more efficient and effective. So I think it's important to look at the process first, because there might be things in there you need to fix and change, and there might be limitations in what the software can actually do as well. So you have to change the process to fit with that. So we will do a process workshop with the clients for half a day or a day to go through some of their core processes start to finish. And the slide probably looks like it's quite a sort of technical thing, but it's very simple. We use Post-it notes We get people from across the business in the room, and we say, what are the things you have to do every day? We get them to write down a post-it note, stick it up on the wall. We organise the process. And it does a number of things that helps them kind of go, oh, right, I see how we do things now. I can see the whole thing from start to finish. I understand it. And it helps them understand how they can use some of the tools to enable that process. But the next thing we'll do with that is tell them to identify what their issues are. So we give out some red post-it notes. What are your issues? What are the problems? What are the things you can't do? And they get those up on the wall as well. And then we'll go through a process of identifying how we can use a product like Xero or Receipt Bank or something else to fix those issues. So at the end of the day, we've gone through the whole process, revised it, fixed the issues, and they're on board with the idea of the technology. So they're already engaged, they're already really keen to get it going. And it's not just the finance person or the business owner who's saying that's good, it's the whole team in the business. So it really gets things moving fast.
I think that's an important point you mentioned at the end about involving your client within the process, empowers them in a way, and makes that transition for them to get on board much easier.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Mike, the Peloton is known for its client service. I remember last year I wrote an article even about your client service, and so picking up on Ollie's point about including clients within the process, how do you pick software that enhances that client experience?
I think it's worth making the point that obviously our starting point is to try and get stuff that's in the cloud. There is still tech that doesn't exist in the cloud, which is not really where we want to end up in the long haul. So everything would be cloud orientated. Well, I mean, the client's needs. I think the thing is that some clients are quicker on the take up than others is the problem, and you have to, listen as well as you have to, seek to be understood seek to understand before being understood, to understand exactly what their needs are and not push too much too soon on top of them. But as we said a minute ago, the right out of the blocks is always Xero and Receipt Bank, and I can't think of if it's a reasonable size business, that you would do that. Now, and then within our own organisation, where if we wanted to report to them, whether we wanted to put an app on there, which you say could be Spotlight or Futurely, from a reporting point of view. And the thing about that is it just conveys information in a style that they can absorb quite easily, using graphs and rather than profit loss accounts, which are tends to be boring, and balance sheets and what have you. So it's a great comms tool. And then when you sit within their business and you've got the core of it working, then you can say, okay, let's go back to the front of house. What can we look at the front of house that could integrate? And integration obviously is the key, and that sits in the cloud that you can do it. So we do a lot of work with dentistry, for example, and there's a lot of front of house systems that don't sit in the cloud and don't integrate. But there is one or two that are cloud-based and integrate that give massive information. So once you've got your bank is feeding in automatically, your sales data is feeding in, and you've got your purchase information, you've started to build, the core of something that's really good.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the basic journey.
It's really exciting because this is the tools that businesses have now for a few tens of pounds a month.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things you'd spend £10,000 on 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And because of the integration, you can change apps quite easily. So there's very little risk with it.
Yeah, that's true, because you can get in and out of apps for next to no cost.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing is, which is a philosophy within our company generally, is don't get paralysed by perfection. Right? Just make a decision, get on with it, and if you fail, stop doing it and go and do something else. But what you must do is make a decision and get on with it. Because always that seeking for, it doesn't quite do this. Yeah, I kind of get that, but don't worry about it because it does 90 other things.
Yeah,
that's
right. Yeah.
I think that's an important point when it comes to actually choosing tech, but we've all spoken about the actual process of choosing tech, and all your processes sound incredibly slick and it sounds not that stressful. But Mike, you did mention about how some software not being cloud-based was one particular challenge, but I don't know whether any of you had any other challenges when it comes to this stage of choosing tech. I'll start with you, Alex, I guess.
I don't use any desktop product. I will search for the cloud solution. I would use a Xero Marketplace initially to do my research. And if there isn't a solution, There usually is, to be fair. So there's going to be a product out there that's developed. If they don't integrate, the solution to fix that is that because Xero has the open API, the open area, so that developers can link the products together, and it doesn't cost that much to have a developer to fix it, or they can use Zapier, which pretty much ends up fixing and knitting things. So the cloud products will link somehow. Eventually, over the years, potentially, somebody will develop that product to integrate perfectly.
So no challenge really is too big of a challenge. What do you chaps think about that?
Yeah, we were writing a presentation the other day about just about delivering Xero to clients, and Xero sounds like it's the be all and end all. So we thought, okay, it's so clever, what can't it do? And then we thought, well, the only thing there's lots of things it can't do, but the things it can't do have been, as you say, Alex, have been developed by somebody else to do it. So I think the things it can't do is it can't answer the telephone, it can't actually go to the door and see if there's anybody there, and you can't at the moment make payments through it. But just about every other application within a business, if Xero can't do it, there's an app that could do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think so?
Yeah, definitely. Like payments, you've got, is it payment sense, for example, and then you can do back payments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a solution pretty much,
Yeah.
and it might take a little bit of time to research and to find it, but once you found it, it's worth it.
But I think that is one of the challenges, though, because there is so much choice, and actually it's so easy to subscribe to an app and give it a trial, but not really put the time and effort into understanding it and seeing what the benefits are. But if you do start with the idea that there's a benefit to be had, a business benefit, that gives you the impetus to get something going and make the investments in time in that bit of technology.
And Rich, you talk about how do you choose apps and bits and pieces, and it's funny how the whole conversations between accountants have changed. Back in the day, it'd be how are things done at golf club and all that sort of stuff. Now, the first thing I said to Alex when I saw her, what's your app stack? Like that. What you use? It was. Yeah, what's your top three? And because that's it. And then as soon as you start talking to somebody else about what they're using, you say, well, why do you use that? How do you find it?
Yeah.
And then you start to bounce off and learn. And just having an hour with Ollie is amazing. And Alex, just to hear what they're doing and what's working. So it's a really good source.
I totally agree. That's the really exciting way of sharing this kind of information. We talk and we say, well, what ideas have you got? What have you seen that works?
Yeah.
And what problem have you fixed recently? That, for me, that's one of the best ways of learning about what the tools are.
Yeah.
We're all looking for a solution to do things easier, quicker, faster, and more efficient.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point to move on to our next section, which is actually about managing tech. And Alex, in a really practical sense then, we mentioned there about you having 47 apps.
Yeah.
So how do you actually manage having all of those apps, and how do you manage the effort that takes?
So the solutions are, so you can have one login solutions now, and they pretty much all go onto, I use a product called Bitium, but that you have LastPass or one login. I don't know what you guys use. And they pretty much all go on there. I can manage all the applications. I can manage all my staff applications. It has all the security on there. I don't have to give out passwords. And it allows you to select favourites that you log into each day. But it's literally logging into one area and then logging in through that as one login. And then that way you don't have to have multiple browsers open to log into different solutions or products that you're using at one time. And we don't use them all at one time, maybe 7-ish.
So 7 screens.
7 screens, yeah. We've all got the curved screens in the office, so we can access everything. But it's not going to change. It will increase. I've just recently moved home and realised that I had maybe about 16, 17 applications just for my home. And I bet you guys have probably got, okay, so if you've got your online banking, you've got your Tesco, you've got your fuel, there's all these applications just for my personal use.
Streaming, yeah.
And I'm sure everybody else at home is the same. So what's the difference with the business?
It's one thing actually managing all of these different apps, but when it comes to actually the costs and the rolling subs, Ollie, how do you manage that in your firm?
Yeah, it can be quite a challenge actually, because sometimes you're rebilling the cost of the subscription. We tend to try and wrap it up in a service, so only really using the tool because it helps us deliver a service to a client. So we probably wrap that up in the cost of the service, so we're not having to then recharge things. Some of the app providers are doing different pricing packages now, so they will do a sort of all-you-can-eat price, which really helps a lot, because you can then just say, well, look, we might as well just use this for everybody, because it's kind of, it doesn't cost us any more money. So we try and do it that way, and if we have to recharge, then that's a bit of a headache. So it gets quite hard.
And as well, you've sorted out your apps. You've sorted out the process of charging, but then the next process is getting all of your staff and all your firm behind this. So Mike, how do you go about getting all your team behind your tech selections?
Well, I think it is a bit of a challenge at times, but to be honest, the ethos of the company, and it's not probably dissimilar for Alex or Ollie's, is that's what we do. So when you come to work at the Peloton, that is what you do. So it isn't. We do other things as well, of course, but having an understanding of all the core apps. We haven't got 47, but having an understanding of the core apps is what all the guys do. So you won't go in there and find somebody who can't work Zero, who doesn't understand receipt bank, who doesn't get the basics of Futurely. They're all trained in it. And the training is, it is really quick, isn't it? I don't think it's anything that's hugely complicated if you spend a lot of time.
If you join Evans & Partners, first thing you do is get Zero certified, first day.
Yeah.
You can't do the job otherwise.
Yeah.
Nolly, before the actual webcast, you also mentioned about having a internal app champion within your firm who you bring actually into that process we saw earlier on. Yeah,
exactly. So what we found was having somebody who knows that app really well. They're using it on a regular basis with clients and perhaps internally in the firm as well. And if we're using this a lot, there might be 2 or 3 people who are quite deep with that product. So that works because they can carry on with the education, because these apps change a lot, so they need to keep up to date with the features, and they can help train the rest of the team as well. So we found that's the best way to do things for us.
And there's one thing of having those questions from your actual staff members, but then there's another thing about having your clients constantly ask questions about particular software. So, Alex, how have you gone about doing this? Have you sort of invested in any video activity or anything to get clients educated on this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have a video solution, so we use Loom, and we record things on how to, and we send it to them. And so if they're stuck on something, it's easy for us just to record how to, send it across, and it's easier than sending them or typing up a process on, this is how you go here, that's how you go there. But it's also really important to lead the team and the staff and the clients in the right direction, and to be positive about it, and to encourage them that actually this is the best solution for your business. They've come to you as advisors, so you need to advise them that that is the right way. That's what our role is.
I think you're right. It's trusted advisors. If you make a recommendation, then that means a lot more than just going out and picking something from the marketplace. Helps them put some impetus behind it.
So there's an important point there about actual hand-holding. Is that much involved after you've integrated that tech within their firm, within their businesses? Does that happen?
I think when it's Zero and Receipt Bank, you do some hand-holding, but they learn very quickly. And it's not that. I think it's when you add some of the other apps, front of house and bits and pieces. But we find that there are 1 or 2 providers who are also massively supportive in helping people, and we don't actually hold ourselves out in certain areas to be experts, but we would introduce somebody to one of the app users, and they're happy to get in the car, drive to the client, do a whole demo for half a day, and if they sign up, that's cool, and if they don't sign up, they'll move on, but they're really helpful.
Yeah. Do you touch in with clients and do health checks or anything with them to make sure that they're getting on okay? Is that something that happens regularly?
Yeah, so we have with our onboarding process, we schedule calls in to make sure that they're on the right track. But the beauty about it is that we can actually log in and see whether or not they're doing okay. But we'll log in, and if we see that they're not doing something quite right, then it is another opportunity to then touch base with them and just see whether or not they need a little bit more extra support.
Yeah,
That's absolutely true.
You do need to give them the support initially, but again, they learn it really, really quickly, and so that doesn't really last that long.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of variety. Sometimes we're doing big migrations with businesses who might have a traditional bookkeeper who's used Sage for 20 years. And they need a lot of support to build their confidence. So we might do some quite formal training with them over a number of days, and then we might send somebody out once a week just to sit with them, watch your list of issues this week, so they can start to build their confidence and know they've got support physically until they really get involved with it and get going, until they kind of say, well, actually, it's nice you're coming down to see us, but please go away and leave us. We're okay.
Before we move on to the final section, which is about the opportunities of tech, it's important as well that if you do have any questions, be sure to actually pop them in the comment box beside the actual webcast, and we'll be getting them to them as soon as we have discussed the final section of today, which is all about the opportunities of tech. So, of course, a little known thing called MTD. We've also got GDPR. We've got all the acronyms hitting the accountancy landscape at the moment, which is really one of the important reasons why tech is really important for an accountancy firm in this day and age. So, preparing, reacting to these changes, how has tech helped you encounter any of these big changes, Ollie? How have you managed the waves?
It's been absolutely fundamental for us, particularly Xero. I mean, we started using Xero 8 years ago, as I said, and when we first did that, we found that clients were asking us lots of questions and how do I do this? How do I put my dividends through? How do I process this invoice? And at that stage, we were kind of saying, well, we'll deal with that at the end of the year when we do your accounts. And that was the approach we took. You know, we had a one point of contact with clients rather than spread out over the year. So we really had to change the way we worked. So our services changed. So we've become much more supportive, a much higher level of interaction with clients. And we're doing a lot of stuff which isn't accountancy. You know, it's actually helping them run their business day to day. And then suddenly you've got data, so you can give them feedback about how their business is running, and show them where there might be some issues, and show them where there might be some opportunities as well. So, and actually I'm finding now that prospective clients are coming to us and just saying, we need this is what we want. We know you can do accounts and tax returns. We want all this other stuff, which we kind of thought accountants would do for us, but they never have. So the market is changing very quickly, and it's only the tools that let us do that. Of course, we could do it without the tools, but it would be so expensive that no one would pay for it. So the tools help us do it cost effectively. It's really important.
And Mike, how has tech helped you? How, being a tech-based firm, how has it helped your firm?
Well, I mean, at one level, I think you just get better conversations. I'm about 100 years older, you know, than these guys, and therefore, that some of the stuff that you can do with tech now, but some, you know, so it's back to that bit, you know, when you're at a dinner party, you know, like, I don't know if you remember that movie about a boy. Do you remember that, when he was sitting next to that girl, and they were chatting away, they got on really well, and she said to him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh yeah, my dad wrote that song, and I live off all the royalties." And she went, "Okay," like that, and just turned away. Well, that happened to me in my sort of early days when, you know, I was an accountant. You know, you'd be out having a chat, you get on really well with somebody, things are going fantastic. It's, "Oh, what are you doing?" They say, "You're an accountant." You go, "Okay," like that, and then you leave me alone. So I reinvented myself as a financial historian, you know, and so chat, got on really well. "And what do you do?" "Financial historian." "Oh my God, that's amazing. This guy's a financial historian." Look at that, you know. They got really excited. And they say, "What period?" And they say, "Last year." And they go, "You're an accountant, aren't you?"
It's never getting away, Mike.
You know, you can't
catch you up.
But what's happened now is that you know, you can because you've got all this sort of data, and for the old, this is the story about the old guys, okay? So what I really like is that thing where you've got Receipt Bank on your phone and you get an invoice and you take a photograph of it, and all the data is copied, like, you know, without anybody touching it, and fed it over here. You know, the automatic bank feeds, and so it just starts conversations. It starts conversations as you introduce people to it, but it also starts conversations because people have got live data, they say, "What does that mean?" Or what happens now? Because tech doesn't actually solve any of their problems in terms of their business. It just gives them better information about them, and our role is to interpret the information that they get and help them find better ways of solving it. So for the opportunity for me is the conversation.
And Alex, when it comes to tech, how has it sort of helped you differentiate yourself? And you're there with your brand new logo as well. Of course, tech is probably a big part of just who you are and who your firm is.
Yeah, of course. So, the business is based on being cloud and technology focused. But any area of technology or any changes in the legislation with GDPR making tech changes, there's always opportunities. Without the technology, I genuinely don't know how some of the practices will actually get to submit their stuff on time, or they'll spend hours and hours and be really under pressure when it comes to those, the deadlines. We don't have that issue because everything is already online now. So I would be so nervous coming up to making tax digital if my stuff wasn't online. So it would be making sure that you do look at the software and you take it as an opportunity to get your clients online. We spend most of our time mentoring and coaching clients, which then brings on consultancy fees, for example. We don't worry about compliance and legislation. That kind of happens in the background. We automate the processes for that. But without the technology, that couldn't have happened. That wouldn't have been able to be, I couldn't have set my business up based on the old way of doing things. So I would just look at it as an opportunity.
So we've spoken about some of the opportunities, but at this stage, with all of these GDPR, MTD, all happening to the profession, what are the big challenges if you're a tech-based firm? Are there any, or is there actually something sneaking around the corner that could be a potential challenge?
Yeah, there's a few things really come to mind. Just something, Alex made me think of something there. I mean, she's done amazing things with her firm, but she started as a new business and set it up the way she wanted to do it. A lot of people will have a traditional firm they're trying to change. Mm-hmm. That's harder in some ways, I think, because you're trying to move away from that focus on compliance. And the focus then is the dates the government sets us, and that's not really helping us get data to advise clients with. So that's a big challenge for us, I think. I'm also slightly nervous about all the trial subscriptions I've signed up to and linked to my Xero accounts. I'm wondering how GDPR compliant that is as well. So I think I need to do a little review of those and maybe do some tidying up. So,
but there's cultural things as well, aren't there? If you have a traditional firm in getting the team to get their head around the way that you can do work now, and that you, as you say, you can simplify all the compliance and let it go back here and move into that advisory space, which has got considerable value for the client. But the team, their head isn't there yet, and one of the challenges is getting them up to speed.
And one of those, what I recommend and what has helped me with my practice is, one, I obviously am passionate about the technology, but it's attending things like Accountex and the Xero Roadshows and XeroCon, so that you get to meet all of the softwares that are available around you, because meeting them face to face, seeing what they do and what they offer, will then encourage you to then bring that into the team and into the business.
That's great stuff. Well, that brings us on to the final part of today's session, which is the question and answer section. So during the whole session, our viewers have been sending through questions on the Cover It Live box, which is still just beside the webcast window. So if you still have any last minute questions, please send them through and we will try to get through them. So for the last 10 minutes or so, we're just going to go through some of these questions which have come through from some of our viewers, and some have actually touched on some of the conversations we've already had. So this one comes from an Accounting Web member called Chester Draws, and they ask, how do you find time to do all the research necessary? We're so overloaded with compliance issues such as GDPR and MTD, like we were just discussing in the last section, and there seems to be no time for anything else. So throwing that out to all three of you.
So the research can be a fun thing, as Alex said. Go out and meet people, go and meet other accountants, ask them what they're doing to solve their problems. That, for me, that was the fastest and quickest way to get going. And once I've got my list in my head, I'll do some Googling and do some research and do some trials and things like that. So it doesn't have to take loads of time.
I agree. It can be done in a social context just by chatting. And the time that we've spent together, I've learned a lot. And with you too, about the opportunity to just talk to people.
Yeah.
There's there are like LinkedIn groups and like Facebook groups and things like that you can join, where if you had a question and you had a client that was in a specific industry, you'll have 100 comments and solutions given to you. So you don't need to necessarily spend that time yourself. You just simply ask the question, and there's so much support available. So finding the time, if it's going to save you time in the long run, it's almost like you need to make time for it.
The other place is the Xero Community Forum. Do you use that at all? So you go, the Xero help section has a community forum, so you can go on there, speak to other business users. What are you doing to manage this? How do you deal with this problem? It gives you a starting point with your research.
And I will tag on to that as well. We've also got the Any Answers board on Accountingware, where you can do a similar thing as well, and you can ask our members and everyone else how they are getting on with some of their own software. And so if we return to the questions, we've also got this one come through from R. Ding, who wants to know what are the most common client issues that crop up when they are adopting new apps. So throwing that out to the forum again, what's some of the most common issues?
Some people, they don't sometimes understand the setup process, and they might sign up themselves and think, brilliant, it's going to link and it can do everything. And so we have a process in place. We have a wiki on certain things and what we need to do on the setup process to make sure it's done correctly. If once you've got that set up, you pretty much apply that to every single client that you put on there. So it's just checking things like, have they got the right VAT treatment, for example? Just really simple things to consider.
Yeah, we sort of see similar kind of issues. I think if a client doesn't really understand the benefits of what they're trying to do, they're not investing the time in the product, so it can stall at that point. So sometimes it helps if we're helping them set it up, just to keep it going.
But as a general rule, it's unusual to see a huge number of queries come through on a Xero receipt bank. It's usually in the periphery, bits and pieces. So getting people, I mean, I know you said you spent a couple of days with someone, which I was intrigued by, but we think our average training time for somebody who's never been involved with Xero to getting them reasonably good is about an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, sure, that's the standard training we do. Yeah.
So on the point of Xero, we have a lot of users. We're a broad church. Users use many different software out there. And one question mentions that you all three are Xero users, but do you consider other software available out there? Have you used any of the other software? And on that point as well, this particular member said that Xero are not the cheapest of the software out there, which is obviously a key factor when people come to picking software. And a further question on this, they add that if a client does not have the software or the time to record their transactions and want to just hand it over to you, then how do you cope with the actual workload? Do you get cost resistance? So throwing that out to all three, there's a few questions in there, but if we can tackle them maybe one by one. When it comes to then...
I think just do the like handing it all over to you where they just don't want to get involved. I think that's more of an opportunity for us than a threat. On a number of levels. Certainly we can do it very cost effectively and we tend to outsource it for the completion of that. And secondly, we can also do it to the standard that we want to do it and keep on top of it. So when it comes to the end of the year, you feel reasonably confident that you've got good data, or if you're doing monthly or quarterly information, then it's going to be a lot better.
Absolutely, I think Alex said that. The compliance piece just falls out the end of the process. You're dealing with everything every day. The compliance bit just happens at the end. I think one of the challenges with it though is what I'm seeing is the people in the professions. We need a hybrid skill, sort of hybrid bookkeeper and accountant now. Somebody who's a bit more than an accountant, but not just a pure. In one camp or the other, and that's a challenge. We find it really hard to find the right people to do that.
And I think it will also not not wishing to be seen biased, and we're just 000 because obviously it's QBO and other bits and pieces out there. But for me, it's about course of least resistance. I've got to get as much done as I can in the time available. So I could get in the ring without loads of other bits and pieces as well. But I've chosen to back one and invest in that heavily. And at the moment, it's supporting us at every step of the way. So I'm not likely to change.
You've got to make your choice, and the comment there was about price. Xero is more expensive, perhaps, but value is different. And if it's easy for clients to use and easy for us to say to clients, this is what you should be doing, it's perceived as the market leader, then to me that's just a no-brainer. So we could look at alternatives, but as Mike said, we're investing really heavily in these products in terms of how we get to know them. So we can't afford to spread that thinly over a number of different products. I think that would be a mistake.
So if a client comes to you and they strictly use just one piece of software, that's what they've become used to, and you're saying, oh no, go across to Xero. Yeah. How do you manage that? Is it a no to that client, or do you train them to use a different piece of software? Or are you able to take on that piece of software which they're currently using?
There was a different reason. I selected Xero because as a new practice, it was like a whole practice solution for me for Workflow Max, or Practice Manager now, for Xero HQ, for payroll, for it basically offered me everything I needed to get my practice up and running. When it comes to clients that are not on Xero, I transfer them, because when you're running the business, I would prefer to train and educate one solution, and to people to go in and understand that area on that one, rather than having several different ones. Our apps are already huge. We have to teach them that. I don't really want to be educating on several different bookkeeping softwares as well. Yeah. But equally, I personally find that Xero was designed for the end user, for the business owner, not the accountant, which was more a key focus for me.
And I think it's really, really important to remember all of the time that it isn't actually about the tech. It's actually about the relationships and the conversations that you're having, and so whether you're using this piece of software or that piece of software actually doesn't matter. It's about what you do with it and how you begin to interact, because in my opinion, it ratchets up your relationship. We talked a lot yesterday about the stickiness of the relationship, because you've got better relationships with your clients. So even if they're using product A and you want to get them on product B, it's irrelevant. It's just irrelevant. You just get them on there, but then start talking to them, having better conversations.
I think I was just going to finish off, Richard, and say I think as accountants we need to really understand what's our niche for our own firms. How do we do business? What kind of business do we want? For me, it's Xero-based business. So if someone comes along and says we're not using Xero and we never will, we have a pretty hard conversation about how that's going to work. How do we service them if they're using a different product, particularly if they're using a desktop product? And so we're not actively attracting that kind of work. It just doesn't make sense for us. We can't work as efficiently or cost effectively. So why do it?
So we've spent a lot of time today talking about bookkeeping expenses captures tools, and one of the questions that comes through sort of goes back to how we started, where we talked about this being a new tax year, and it's a perfect opportunity to choose and to even transition over to new software, whether that's internal tax or practice systems. So has that been on your thoughts at this time of year, whether it's a new internal tax or practice system for your practice?
I always think of the expression, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? 20 years ago. And the second best time is now, so it doesn't really matter where you are in the cycle, just do it, and get on with it. I think you can use the leverage of a new tax year to open conversations with people and say, look, now's a really good time to do it. But, we've had companies turning over significant amounts of money and taking them off one program and put them onto another right in the middle of their tax year. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And not worried about it.
It's an interesting conversation, because we often have this with the financial person in the business who says, well, let's do it. Let's do this migration or change at the end of the tax year or the end of the VAT quarter. we'll say, well, you see there's a business benefit for doing this, so why wait? You know, why would you do that for, you know, and delay things?
So, unfortunately, we haven't got enough time to go through all the questions that's come through, but after this webcast, we're also recording a podcast with all three panelists, so hopefully we will be able to get through plenty more of your questions there. But as a tease, and I think this one actually might be a good conversation for the actual podcast, which will be available on accountingweb.co.uk relatively soon. So to kick things off, and before we launch into it in the podcast, so this one comes from Chester Draws again, who asks, how do the panelists feel about recruiting non-accountants to key tech positions in their firm? This sounds like it could be quite a conversation starter. So I guess just initial thoughts, and then we'll go more in depth in the podcast.
Sure.
So guys, initial thoughts.
So I think that's probably one of the
answer to that.
one of the first things we talked about, wasn't it? What are your biggest problems at the moment?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, it has been me personally. It's been a challenge because my business was set up to be fully cloud and technology based. So having somebody that was a qualified person, like a bookkeeper, coming into my firm, their job role was completely different, and they didn't really understand how to do their job. And so I ended up recruiting people without a financial background, and they've been a much better model for my business.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're going to pick this up in the actual podcast. We've just got enough time to go through each one by one and find out your top tips from today's session. So if you can if viewers can take away one thing, Ollie, what would it be?
I think I'd stick my neck out and say compliance is dead as a service for accountants. We're going to see that diminishing over time, becoming cheaper and cheaper. You have to find ways of giving advice and supporting your clients. That's what they
Mike?
want.
I'd say embrace it. As I say, I'm a lot older than these guys, and I've been around the block 1,000 times, but this is by far and away the most exciting phase that we've ever seen in accountancy, or a new accountancy, shall we call it.
Alex, your final thought for today?
Mine would be to to be motivated about technology and to implement that, and just encourage your team and your staff and be the thought leader to them, so they can embrace it as well. So you need to lead that.
Wonderful. And if any of this conversation today inspired you or made you just think about some of the innovative and excellent things that you're currently doing in your firm, why not enter the Accounting Excellence Awards, which is now open to both practice and business accountants. The entries close on the 13th of May, that's Sunday the 13th of May, and you'll be able to find out much more information about all the categories and all the terms and conditions on accountingexcellence.co.uk. And of course, like I mentioned just a moment ago, we're going to also be having a extra time podcast with all three guests, and that'll be available on accountingweb.co.uk in due course, where I'm sure we're going to be chewing over that last question for a little longer. And all that's left from me to say is thanks very much for watching today. Thanks to all my guests, Ollie, Mike, and Alex. A big thank you as well to our sponsors today, Thomson Reuters, for making this whole thing happen. And finally, thank you from me, and thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Richard Hattersley.